All right, good Thursday afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Hopefully, you enjoyed some fun festivities last night with friends and family. If you didn't and got some good shut eye, you're probably well rested for the start of the new year. We're going to break down your forecast this afternoon. There's not much to talk about for today. We do have maybe, and again, this is a very low chance for some isolated sprinkles for tomorrow, the rain kind, not the donut kind. That'll be something that we'll talk about. We're also going to talk about maybe that change in the weather pattern that we're kind of starting to see unfold for maybe the end of next week. That doesn't guarantee us rain or snow, but we're going to get out of this ridge of high pressure just being parked on top of the Texas panhandle. That's going to probably introduce some windier days at times. We could see a dry slot from some storm systems set in somewhere, which would mean some higher winds, some fire danger. If we do get a favorable track of some lows, that could mean maybe some rain and or snow could also be possible. And we're going to try and break down some of those, at least more of the blurrier details, or the more broad details over the course of the next probably 5 to 15 minutes. But you can see we've got this very subtle trough making its way through the western half of the country. You can see some rain shower activity associated with that. A lot of high clouds have been streaming in overhead. We kind of anticipated that for today. Not expecting any rainfall to get to the ground, though the model and the radar is trying to depict maybe some isolated high base virga showers out there in the South Plains towards Levelland. Let's take a look outside in Dumas. You can see that the temperature there is 64 degrees, southwest wind around 10 miles an hour, and humidity right around 20%. So it is, again, a drier afternoon. Fortunately for us, with the wind being as calm as it is, we aren't really dealing with any true full-fledged fire concerns. Now, here's the sky came down in Dimmitt. You can see quite a bit of those clouds making their way through, but there is some breaks in it. That's why we've got partly cloudy skies for today in your forecast. Temperature is pretty warm, 68 here in Amarillo, 68 in Clayton, also in the 70s in some areas where there's a little bit more sunshine, like Hereford, Vega, Dimmitt, Tulia, and Silverton. 6, 7, Tucumcari, and Clovis. All the kiddos will like that. Winds anywhere from 5 to 25 miles an hour. So we do have maybe some elevated fire conditions down here. The rest of us, again, the winds aren't that strong, but we do have, again, maybe a small pocket where some fire weather concerns are unfolding this afternoon, but most of us not having to deal with that. Just want to take a quick recap of the month of December. I was gone really all of last week and Monday. Was on vacation, seeing some family back down in Central Texas. Got to enjoy seeing some of them last week. But you guys got to deal with some record heat. They did as well down there. Much of Texas did. But with that week of hot weather, it actually ended up placing all three of our climate sites here in the Texas Panhandle in the top two for warmest maximum temperature average for the month of December. So our high temperatures, they averaged out to 63.2 degrees in Amarillo. That is the second warmest temperature average we've got for maximum temperatures in the month. And Dalhart had a number one finish, and then Borger had a top two finish. And if you just look at the average temperatures, including the lows, Amarillo was still, I think, third warmest on record, and that dates back to 1892. So it was one of the hottest Decembers we've had really in record history. So over the last 134 years or so. Here's some additional stats from 2025. Our average temperature for the entire year was 59.4 degrees. That puts us at the 14th warmest year on record. Not top 10 finish, but it was in the top 11%. And our yearly rainfall ended up being 23.88 inches, which is the 28th highest amount we've had from an annual basis. So we did pretty good in that regard. Snowfall, we actually were a little bit above normal. Our average is 17.1. We got 17.9 inches of snow last year, most of that coming in one big event in January where we had 7 to 12 inches of snow across much of the central panhandle there along the Highway 60 corridor. And that again also ended up being our snowiest month, January, where we had 9.3 inches of snow measured at the National Weather Service office on the east side of town. There was more snow on the west side of town, though. Wettest month was July. We actually had a pretty consistent rain event through the entire summer. The summer was actually pretty cool for much of Texas, but July was our wettest month at 3.68 inches. Had our hottest temperature in August, 105 degrees. It happened on the 8th, and then our coldest day was January 21st. We had a low temperature that morning of -4 degrees. Here's your planner for tomorrow. We are not going to be in the negatives to at least start tomorrow, and probably going to continue with this above average weather for temperatures anyway for the next week. As we get towards the middle of the month, that might change. We'll have to break that down here in a second. But we should be in the high 60s, low 70s tomorrow. That's going to be about 15 to 20 degrees above normal. Not quite record setting. The record high temperature for Amarillo tomorrow is 78 degrees. So we're going to fall about 10 degrees shy of that. So we don't really expect us to get to a record setting day, but it is going to be well above average, feeling more like April or May rather than January. Now, here's kind of the biggest change in the forecast over the last 24 hours. There is a possibility, albeit a slim one, that we do see some isolated splash and dash showers in some northwest flow aloft. This is going to be between midday tomorrow and about midnight on Saturday night, mainly really from like 6 p.m. probably till about 11 p.m. And we do think that there's going to be some isolated showers that come out of Colorado. There may be just enough moisture to squeeze out of the atmosphere that we could get some of that to the surface. It's not going to be much. We're talking probably a few hundredths of an inch of rain at most. So this is not going to be a beneficial rain, but you could again see some isolated showers roll through. So just don't get caught off guard with that. Probably going to bring a little bit of mud out of the atmosphere as well. Let's go ahead and run you through the computer model. Again, there's some of those high base Virga showers associated with that low pressure center for today. As we get into tomorrow, we'll start off kind of mild in the 30s and 40s, and then we'll be pretty warm in the afternoon in the 60s and 70s. There's some of those isolated showers that we just talked about, which we think is going to come in some northwest flow, mainly from Clayton down towards the Borger Pampa area. I think that's where most of those showers will be focused around. It's not going to guarantee that you see rain in those locations, but you do have the best chance, which is still a pretty low chance at 20%. As we get into Saturday morning, we'll be in the 30s and 40s, and then it'll be another nice afternoon. We'll have that ridge of high pressure filter in, and that's going to allow for some calm winds and a pretty seasonable day in the 60s and maybe even some low 70s the further south you get. So here's the bigger changes coming in the atmosphere as we get towards the middle of the month. This is for January 8th on Thursday. I just want to point this out. We've got a big trough that's trying to take shape out over the western half of the country. So this is that negative PNA pattern that we've talked about in recent, in recent weeks. I'm going to go ahead and pull over a couple of mediograms for you guys to look at. This is a deterministic model. You can see pretty warm based off of the European model for Amarillo through the next 6 to 7 days, I should say. As we get towards day 10 to 14, you can see we take this really drastic dive south, and that's going to have to come. That's going to boil down to if we see precipitation and or snow. If you take a look at the GFS, there still is a lot of uncertainties on the exact temperature profile that we'll be dealing with, but the general theme is, especially as we get towards January 10th through the 15th, we'll probably see a step down in our highs. It may not be below normal, but we could see at least a dip from where we're at, a 10 to 15 degree drop, which will put us closer to normal. I mean, the extreme side of that, we could be in the 30s for highs. But again, kind of the more conservative guidance is putting us somewhere in the 50s for those high temperatures by the end of next week towards next weekend. And then a really extreme output right now is the Canadian model has us dropping from the 60s and 70s all the way down to maybe staying below freezing for a day out there. Now, those are, again, you've got to take those with a grain of salt. Those are deterministic models. That's just one output, and those change every 6 hours. So just take that with a grain of salt. It's not gospel truth. Something that you should probably look at and take a little bit more weight to is the ensembles. The ensemble gives you a much better average, and you tweak some parameters just a little bit and run the same model about 50 times, and this is what you get to spit out. Now, these are your temperatures, and you can see that we've got some pretty hot weather moving into Monday and Tuesday. We'll probably climb into the 70s those 2 afternoons, and then we start seeing some cooler weather by the end of the week. This is Thursday and Friday, and as we get into the following weekend, and then we get really into the heart of January, you can see a lot of really light blues and even some pinks in here, which is indicating that we will probably have a more notable cool down in the middle part of January. Now, I'm just going to show you the precipitation. This is something that's definitely not as much guaranteed. We're much more confident that we'll see some cooler weather towards the middle of January than we are the wet weather or maybe even snowy weather. But you can see there's maybe a handful of runs in here that do depict that we might get a favorable track for some lows. And some of that could be winter weather as we get towards next weekend and into the following week. We're just going to go ahead and take a quick look at the GFS. You can see very confident in some of that colder weather starting to spill into the area. Again, that's a pretty good consensus on model guidance from an ensemble standpoint. Pretty warm over the next 5 to 6 days. We start seeing that step down process for temperatures by the end of next week as we get into the 11th through the 15th or the 17th. We've got some really cold temperatures kind of smothered in here. So that's bringing down that's bringing down the average temperature in the ensembles. And so that is something that we are growing confident in. You can even see it here in the Canadian as well. As far as precipitation is concerned, there's less consistency there, so we don't want to jump to conclusions on that. When we get these troughs out west, it really boils down to the track of these low pressure centers. Again, if these are closed upper level lows, it really just comes down to where the dry line sets up. Do we have enough moisture in place and enough return flow to actually allow for some rainfall or some snow to try and develop with these systems? More often than not in La Nina years, these track to our north, and we end up getting a lot of what we call the dry slot of these storm systems. So that's why we're not guaranteeing you rain next week or late next week into the following weekend, but we do think this is going to change the pattern. This could certainly allow for some windier weather as those lows rip across the South Plains. If we do get up into the dry slot of those lows, that would probably increase our fire concern. We would have higher winds with those. The dry slots usually aren't very cold. So as we get towards the end of next week, I do think that we're going to have to talk about maybe some more significant weather, whether that is fire concerns, winds, or rain and or snow, or just a mixture of all three. Still is something that we're trying to hash out for your more finite details. But you can see even a deeper low here. This is just January 8th. So again, we're talking mainly about January 10th through the 15th. This low will probably dig and we'll end up seeing a bigger trough try and manifest here over the four corners. And if that does happen, then look out, we'll probably have some windier days for sure. And we may even have that chance for some precipitation as well. Here's our 7-day tracker. We'll show you this real quick before we get into your 8 to 14-day outlook. So this is our forecast, this is what we're going with for right now. Mainly dry weather through the next 6 days. Temperatures in the 60s, low 70s on Sunday, getting real close to that. A couple of those other afternoons. You can see there's your winds next Thursday, sustained around 20 miles an hour. So we could maybe have a breezier day on Sunday, but really starting to see when that trough digs out west, we will probably start seeing a much stronger pressure gradient set up across the panhandles, and that only is going to increase the winds. That will grow more confident in, that we're already starting to grow confident in. Whether or not we see precipitation, pretty low chance, just 20% on Thursday for right now. Let's go ahead and jump back over to the outlooks for the 8 to 14 day. This is the Climate Prediction Center's outlook. This is not our forecast, but this is something to just kind of take and look at. They've got us right around a near normal chance for our temperatures. Again, the colder temperatures are associated with low pressure, ridging. Usually you get more sunshine and hotter weather. You get a lot of sinking air aloft, and so that just allows for some warm weather underneath those ridges of high pressure. So you've got ridging out here in the East Coast, troughing out here along the western half of the country. That is that negative PNA pattern. That's usually a more active pattern for us here in the high plains. As far as precipitation chances go, you may have already saw this on Facebook or Twitter that we had posted earlier this afternoon, but there is that 40% chance for us to be above normal for precipitation according to the Climate Prediction Center. Now, don't get your hopes up. 40% to be above normal in January is not much. We're talking about an average of just about a tenth of an inch. So if we get 1,500 of an inch of rainfall or precipitation next weekend, technically that's above average. So that's, again, that can sometimes be a little misleading for some people when we talk about precipitation chances. It may not be a lot, but as we get closer, we should start to hone in on a much better consensus for what we could expect to see. But just broad brushing those details for right now. That's all we've got for you this afternoon. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a wonderful 2026. Hopefully it treats you much better than 2025 did. And we'll catch you tonight at 5, 6.